Wanted to see the recording. Okay. Well, welcome. Um, Thanks for joining us. Let's see. My name is Madeline. I am RFC's collaborative farming specialist, and I get asked a lot what that means. And um, I guess what it means so far is that I am working on researching collaborative farming models and then trying to get that information out to farmers and working on supporting farmers who are interested in collaborative farming projects. So if you haven't heard of RFC, you probably have if you are here, but we've been around for 20 years now in Oregon. We're a statewide org. Our mission is to support, train, equip, and support the next generation of farmers in Oregon. And our collaborative farming work is our newest initiative. And I'm really excited to say that we're in a moment of expanding our programming. So, this call today, this space is part of our educational programming. This is the second of what I'm calling our quarterly collaborative farming online calls. We had one back in November, last November, about worker co-ops. Stay tuned for the next one. I don't know what it'll be about. I kind of decide based on what's interesting to me in that moment or what folks have been contacting me about. So I actually got the inspiration for this one because I happened to be talking to one of the presenters who's going to be here later about her CSA, and I was like, well, this sounds like a great topic, and I know there's a lot of interest about this for the farmers we work with. If you see me looking over here, I'm looking at some notes so I don't forget anything. I'm going to reference our online resource library a few times during this call. That's been a project I've been working on for the last year and a half. You can find more details about all the different CSAs that I'm going to reference on our collaborative CSA page on that online collaborative farming library. So I'll be referencing that, and I can't drop links while I'm sharing screen, so I'll drop the link to that at the end. But I'm really proud of this resource library. It has just anything that I found that I think would be of interest to you as a farmer, I've put on there. And I am a farmer myself, so if I like, there's a collaborative CSA guide out there that I just thought was kind of trash. So that's not on there. Yeah, I've gone through the work of filtering. I shouldn't say it was trash. I just didn't think it was as useful. But I've gone through the work of filtering through resources that I think would actually be of the most use for you, a lot of which are in podcast and webinar form, because I know you probably don't have a lot of time to sit there and be reading. Something I did want to shout out before we launch into kind of the substance of this call is our support and technical assistance arm of our programming, which is what we're working on expanding right now. Stay tuned for more on that. We're kind of, with all this nonsense going on at the federal level. Things are kind of shifting behind the scenes, but we are working on formally launching a technical assistance program. So if you leave this call and you feel really fired up about starting a collaborative CSA or any other sort of collaborative farming project, we have a lot to offer you in terms of support, one-on-one, hand-holding support to get that project off the ground. So get in touch with me, and I would love to talk to you more about what those resources look like and what we have to offer. We also have more events coming up, so again, stay tuned on that. I'll drop a link. We have an online Google group, so you can make sure you're the first to know about all of our fun collaborative farming events. But we do have one for sure coming up in April in the Eugene area. It's going to be an in-person networking event for you to connect with other farmers who might be interested in collaborating on, whatever kind of project. So again, I'll drop the link so that you can be the first to know about those. And then we do have like an online networking space for these kinds of things, again, that Google group. And I'm hoping that calls like these can also be a place, in the chat if you find someone in your area or in the same region as you who might be interested in collaborating. Like, hopefully, this can also be a space where you can meet like-minded people. Okay, I'm going to move on to the substance of this, which is about collaborative CSAs. I have a little bit to say, and then I'm going to hand it over to the representatives from two different CSAs who are here. I think they're going to give a little spiel about their CSAs, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. We might take the whole hour, we might not. I want this to be a productive space. I'm not in the business of trying to fill time. So hopefully, if you have questions, we can get those answered. We might head out of here early. We'll see. Okay, next slide. So why collaborate on a CSA? There's a lot of pros and cons to it. There's a lot of pros and cons to working with other people, period. But in listening and interacting and hearing from farmers who have pursued projects like this, these are some of the main reasons cited again and again for why they wanted to collaborate on a CSA. So, one of the big ones is that you can share that cost of bookkeeping, marketing, admin, managing your customers. It allows you to focus on being a farmer and share that cost and that burden of the administrative work with other farmers. And so once you reach a critical mass of farmers who are collaborating on a CSA, you can all share that cost, and it can, and I mean, I think almost always works out in the long run in saving you not only that money, but also allowing you to focus on what you got into farming to do, which is to be a farmer. I think that one extra hour in the field is going to be more fruitful for your business than like stepping away from the field, getting behind a computer, getting into admin mode, taking care of all the admin stuff, you know? So that's a big reason that people say collaborating on CSAs is one of is beneficial to their businesses. It allows you the opportunity to specialize in certain crops. Um, as a farmer, because I sell at markets, I grow 50 plus different varieties of crops, and that is a logistical nightmare. And if you're a CSA farmer, you know it is a logistical nightmare to manage all the different crops you need to keep your customers interested. You have to grow a different variety, and like if you grew, I was just reading an article the other day, like if you grew an all kale CSA, you'd be making so much money, right? But you have to grow those lower value crops to keep your customers interested in your product. It only makes sense at scale to be focusing on certain products. And so when you collaborate, you can operate on that larger scale, right? So you can focus on the things you're really good at, and you can take things off the menu for your particular farm that perhaps don't work for your soil. Sometimes the pests in certain areas just get really bad. Maybe you want to take a year off of a crop because you have a rotation system in place. A collaborative CSA allows you that opportunity. It also can help you build community between farmers, which is highly underrated. And just having those folks who you're working with so closely, that community, that ability to commiserate, complain together, and you understand each other's struggle, it can be really healing for the farmer soul. Um, I've heard from farmers who work in collaborative CSAs that it's allowed them to take time off during the season that they wouldn't be able to do if they were managing their own CSA by themselves. You can't take a week off your CSA. Your customers have paid in advance for a product. But if you're working with other farmers and you know that another farmer can pick up your slack or your crops for that particular week, that can be a huge burden off your shoulders if something comes up and you need to take off a week during the summer. Um, and lastly, there's other opportunities for collaboration. There's opportunities to benefit from economies of scale. And oftentimes, farmers who collaborate in this way find other ways. They start renting equipment together, they start hiring harvest crews, sharing that cost of wages, that sort of thing. There's all kinds of ways that farmers end up finding that their relationship working together works really well, and then that becomes something even bigger than just the CSA. Okay. So, in my research about joint CSAs, there are lots of different ways these are structured. And so I have on the screen from the lowest engagement option to the highest engagement option. So, at the most casual level, you have a situation that is incredibly common. It's usually a vegetable farmer who has a mixed veg CSA. They have an established CSA, then they start working with other local producers to purchase their products to offer as an add-on to customers. So you purchase on your own the bread, the dairy, the honey, the chicken, the eggs as an add-on, and then you usually mark that up and then bring it to your customers when they pick up. This can be combined with the next option on the list, which is working together again on a more casual level. Oh, I just scrolled. Let's see how to get back. Okay. Um, so you're sharing delivery, you're sharing pickup locations, you're collaborating on crop planning. So maybe you're like, I was hearing from a farmer last season, like, I just can't grow squash again this season. So I'm still running my CSA, but I'm purchasing in all my squash from another vegetable farmer who I know can grow squash a lot more successfully than I was able to. So they're not necessarily owning or running a CSA together, but they're working together in some way in advance of the season to crop plan to make sure it works. I know of CSA farmers who share or split delivery routes, who hire jointly a delivery driver because you're in the same area, you're driving to the same places anyway, who share pickup locations because there's only so many places in a city that you can pick up a CSA. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're owning or running a CSA together, but they're collaborating on certain elements of running their CSAs. Then on the third point, we have a third party that's arranging a joint CSA on behalf of farmers, and farmers are selling through that. And that's usually through a food hub or other such food aggregator. There's a lot of food hubs in the state that offer programs like this. And if there's not one in your area, we encourage you to think about finding folks who might be interested in taking on a project like that. People who are interested in co-ops and that sort of thing would be really receptive to hosting something like this for farmers. There's one podcast I have linked on the Collaborative Farming Library page of a podcast of a woman in California who just started a business doing this. That's her business she owns, that she started an LLC and she found farmers. And so, on behalf of those farmers, she runs their CSA for them. I don't know how she's making money. I'm curious. I'm curious what her markup is. The podcast didn't cover that as far as I remember, but obviously it's possible. She still has the CSA up and running today. And lastly, at the most engaged level, we have farmer-led, farmer-owned CSAs. Usually these are cooperatives. Sometimes they're like LLC businesses. And I have a few of those linked on the library page for you to pursue or for you to peruse, as well as a really in-depth manual on how one co-op did this. It's a little bit old. I think it's a decade old, but that CSA is still up and running today. I think they've been around for almost maybe over 20 years now. And it really goes into depth about how they have structured their co-op CSA, how they manage crop bidding. They've developed a really creative way of collectively crop planning, bidding for which farmer is going to grow which crop, ensuring folks are securing the prices that they want, et cetera, et cetera. And also I've heard from a lot of the farmers involved in cooperatives and joint CSAs that they run and own, that they also involve bulk purchasing things together. So seeds, fertilizers, harvest materials. They also sometimes will join together on wash pack and team together to access cold storage. So because they have that critical mass, they're able to collaborate and reach and access resources that they probably wouldn't be able to on their own. Another thing to note about this type of co-op model, if you were on the last call we talked about worker co-ops. In this case, it would be a marketing co-op. It's a whole different structure. It's where the businesses co-own the cooperative together. So not everyone who works for the co-op is like a worker owner in the way we sometimes think of when we're thinking about worker co-ops. Um, a lot of the examples that I've seen of these multi-farm CSAs, they work well and they're still going years and years later. But they do talk very openly about the huge burden of starting up. So a big challenge to scaling up a multi-farm CSA is that you'll very quickly find yourself in need of a staff person to manage and coordinate your CSA. At the really small informal scale, you can manage on your own, but when you start getting into offering hundreds and hundreds of hundreds and hundreds of shares, or scaling up to the point where you're going to be benefiting from those economies of scale, you're going to either be exploiting yourself, which I mean, as a farmer, I'm sure you're used to, but we don't want that, or exploiting a fellow farmer in the CSA, or you're going to need to hire someone. And so it's that transitionary period where you're still small enough where you feel like you can't afford it, but not quite big enough that you have that income going to pay for someone. That can be difficult. There are, I don't know about right now, there were, hopefully there will be again, really amazing grant opportunities to fund projects like this. There's nothing more appealing to grants than a startup project. So getting you through that transitionary period, it can be great to apply for a grant. Or some CSAs have joined or become subsidiaries of nonprofits to benefit from that 501(c)(3) funding to fund the person who's going to be running their CSA. Um, but the benefit is that if you can find that critical mass, then it can be cheaper, to hire that person in the long run to run the CSA. And again, it takes the burden off of you so you can focus on being a farmer, which is what I'm sure you would rather be doing than marketing to customers and driving a delivery van. I think, yep, that's all I have for you. So, um, here's my email if you want to contact me. I'll drop again all those links I mentioned in the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's see. I was letting in people without looking. Chloe, I'll answer your question in a second in the chat. Do we have Delaney's here, right? Is Delaney here? We have Delaney and Laura too. I don't know which one of you would I think well Delaney's on screen. So if you want to go first, does that work for you? All right, we're going to hear from two different CSAs, and up first is Delaney from Klamath Grown. I'll hand it over to you.
I wanted to ask you, is the music, I'm at a coffee shop, is the music pretty loud? So I can go outside.
I think it's totally fine. Zoom does a
Okay.
good job of blocking that
Cool.
out.
Hello, everybody. My name is Delaney. I work for Klamath Grown, which is a nonprofit food hub in Southern Oregon in Klamath Falls. And we work with about 30 different producers all around the area, some regionally located in like Central Oregon and Southern Oregon, and then the rest in Klamath. And last year we ran a collaborative CSA for the first time. And like Madeline mentioned, it was grant funded the first year. So we applied for a grant through the USDA for my position actually and to help support the first year of a CSA program. And the boxes were marketed to retail customers and to like food access organizations. So that's kind of how we got the grant for the program. And then basically, I was hired to kind of coordinate the whole thing and run the program for the first year. So last year, we had about 13 producers involved, and it was kind of just our pilot year. And we sold a total of 40 boxes. And yeah, I would definitely say like there was a lot of, at least in our area, people are kind of collaborating all the time because it's high desert region, hard to grow, short growing season. So there's only like a few small farmers doing what they're doing in our area. So they're already pretty collaborative, I would say, and they have a good community. Um, but basically, we just had a couple meetings to see who was interested, and then we created like a collaborative crop planner document. And on that document, we had everyone kind of enter. It was crop by crop, and we had everyone enter like their expected crops for each month that we wanted to do the program. And then we used that spreadsheet to kind of look at where the overlap was and then where we had gaps for the program because we knew we wanted to provide like well-rounded boxes for everybody. And then if we had multiple producers growing the same thing, we kind of decided to switch off every other week to make the program as like equitable as we could. And then if we had a gap for something that we didn't have, we did like reach out to other farms that weren't necessarily a part of like the collaborative CSA to just get one item from them to kind of fill in. So that was like our strategy to create the boxes to be as like robust and full as we could, which in our area is just more difficult because we don't have all the variety of crops for at least June is a really difficult month for us for sure. A lot of our farmers are kind of like waiting to see how the weather changes. But yeah, basically, what I would do is just aggregate all the items. So everyone would drop off to one location, which we have a food hub space where we already aggregate because we have a not an online market that people can shop on and order from. So that's the benefit of working with a food hub like Klamath Grown, is that we have kind of those like tools and spaces already and like refrigeration and like the procedures for like bringing in food from multiple vendors and distributing it. So everyone would just drop off their food along with their weekly drop off for the online market. And then we would store it in separate area and then pack it all together. And then we do have a delivery vehicle that's refrigerated, and we have a delivery driver that works for us and delivers customer orders and wholesale orders. So we would deliver the CSAs just on that route. So yeah, for us it was pretty easy to like incorporate it into our model already because we are an online market that already has like weekly deliveries and pickups and that schedule with our producers all dropping off on one day between the hours of 9 and noon. So it's kind of like easy to shift people into that frame of thinking. But I guess if people were doing that without a food hub, you would need to just build those systems in place. And maybe I'm not sure whoever else is sharing on the call, but I'm not sure if they're a part of a food hub, if they're kind of doing it just like collaboratively with farmers. So maybe we can go back and forth and share about the differences for that. But yeah, and then the only other thing I would say, we had farmers do a little bit of a like wholesale pricing on their prices for all the CSA ingredients, different vegetables and produce. And then we marked it up 15% on our market to get the final share cost. So that's kind of how we built in our time for coordinating the program and just like covering a little bit of the overhead. And then my position was funded through a grant. So the actual boxes weren't just paying for my position. So there's like a couple different things we did to help make it sustainable for us to coordinate the whole thing. But yeah, we only also like looking back on reflections for last year, there was only, I think there was like two times that I think there was like someone who was going to grow snap peas for us, and we had a super late frost in June, and then the season was really short, and they just didn't do well in Klamath, so we didn't have snap peas, and like I think that was one of the only crops that like quote unquote failed last year, and we were just able to fill it with something else. And yeah, we provided like recipes with each of our boxes and newsletters, which is super common. And we just communicated to people if I think it was like after we had told them we were going to have snap peas that we didn't, but that was really the only big snafu last year. It went pretty well. And like, as far as my position, there's a lot of like logistical things of like, we planned out roughly what we would have each month, but it did vary quite a bit throughout the actual season. And so my job was like trying to balance the boxes out and have variety while also supporting getting as much from our farmers as we could. And I think that being able to change it, like have a plan, but change the plan is like definitely always a part of these programs. And like luckily we would send out the newsletter for our CSA like on Friday, and I would select what was in the boxes on Thursday. So usually that wouldn't change, but we weren't having to like tell people too far ahead of time what to expect in the boxes, which was helpful because often it did change a lot from what we thought it was going to be originally. So, yeah. Are there
Well,
any other
thanks.
questions that come to mind right now, or we can wait?
I definitely have some, but I think first I want to let Laura speak a little bit, and then maybe I can ask questions to both of you and open it up if anyone else has questions too. But I want to make sure we have time because I know Laura is also joining us from Full Farm CSA. So if you could tell us a little bit about your CSA, how it got started, how it runs, maybe how it looks different compared to one that's run from a food hub, that would be
Right. Good morning. Hi, I'm Laura Waite, and I work for Full Farm CSA, which is a part of Deck Family Farm. We are in Junction City, just north of Eugene. We started as a multi-species livestock farm, rotational grazing, regenerative practices, organic as much as possible. And when the CSA started, it was another retail avenue for the farm besides having farmers market booths. We have something like 7 during the year around Portland and Eugene. The CSA now, the evolution of it, I couldn't probably describe very carefully, but what we do now is Full Farm is a separate entity from Deck Family Farm, and we have many vendors that we also bring their food in to us. The customer is managed on a software called Local-Line, where they have subscriptions running. We charge them every month ahead of time, which provides them with a balance in our system, which they then go in and shop and add things to their cart, which we then collect for Tuesday delivery. We close that shopping window on a Sunday night. On Monday, we've sent out the orders to the various vendors. Tuesday morning, we collect those items from the vendors who are all within 20 miles of the farm. And we bring them to the farm, pack them up, and drive them out that afternoon for Tuesdays. That happens on Fridays and Saturdays, then on the weekend orders that go to Portland. The inventory is managed by the inventory, and all the fulfillment is managed by one other staff person, and I do all the customer relations, management of the subscriptions, and the email marketing that's involved in keeping everybody informed about what's going on in the CSA. We use vendors in all areas of food types. We have we have a vegetable garden on our farm as well, which is a separate entity again from Full Farm and from DEC. And then we use other vegetable farmers to round out what we can offer. We use OGC or organically grown company in the midwinter when we can't find things, when we've had all these surprise frosts and whatnot, making it fairly unreliable to grow all year long. OGC becomes an important resource for us. We desperately try to keep everything as local as possible, not even California if we can help it. But we also have bakers. We have Azure Company, which we got involved with them because they purchased Sweet Life or Sweet Creek, which is a company that makes jams and canned goods and all kinds of things in Lane County. Rather big company at this point. We have coffee purveyors. We have 3 different bakeries. We have Southern Oregon or olive oil company, t-shirts and local producers of wooden spoons and things like this. We have everything one could want. So if I describe this to a customer, oh, we also have dairy, raw dairy. That's part of DEC. So I can say to a customer, you can do theoretically all your shopping in our store and get all the categories of your groceries, which is lovely. Localine, the software that we use, is out of Canada. We used to do this all in-house. One of the owners of the farm is a programmer, so he tried to do that himself. It is easier to have someone else manage it, who we can then call and say, hey, what's up with this problem, and they fix it. We do recommend Localine. It's not perfect. What we use them for is inventory tracking, coordinating with all the vendors, managing the subscriptions with the customers, and order fulfillment. So pretty much everything. And my job of, I get to work on a farm. I'm usually on the computer, but but that's okay because it makes the farm work possible. And I'm not sure that might cover all I can think of right off the top.
Yeah, well, we already have a question for you in the chat from Chloe, who's interested in the separate entity, how that works. So does the vegetable farm rent land from the landowning entity, and how does that affect insurance for all the different businesses you have going on?
Yeah, how the insurance is applied, I am not the expert on, but yes, the relationships, they on paper look like we are unrelated entities who have a business relationship, unrelated familially, because obviously there are crossovers of our staff and of our ownership and management, but we try to keep that all separate on paper, charging each entity for the services the other provides. I think this becomes, and yes, they have separate insurance. I do know that. For instance, with bird flu and dairy scare going on right now, I asked the owners, what happens if we get a USDA inspection that goes south? We've all heard about these things in the news. And he explained to me that the insurance being separate, the only thing they can attack is that one entity, which is a lovely way to set it up. So all the infrastructure belongs to probably DEC Family Farm, and the business of our dairy or the business of our poultry would not be able to attack that infrastructure. They could only go after certain portions of those other businesses. So the insurance is kept in silos. We just do a lot of billing and tracking of costs behind the scenes. And that takes careful work.
That makes sense. And I mean, I would recommend to almost anyone if you're starting a project like this and you're working with multiple different farms, making a separate entity is a smart decision for
Yeah.
exactly that reason, for that liability. I see another question for Delaney. We're wondering approximately how many hours a week you work on organizing and getting out the CSA. Um, just on the whole, how many hours it takes to run your program. They're starting a food hub and wondering how many hours they should be expecting. And maybe to that also, I don't know if you mentioned you could mention the scale, like how many shares you offered last year and how many you're offering this year.
Yeah. So it probably takes me, I mean, I was talking to our team about this because we're trying to figure out like how to fund my position through this program, but I would say it's about like 20 hours a week um on the CSA. It's quite a bit. And then once you get going in the summer, maybe it drops down a little bit once you've like gotten everything going, but there's quite a bit of time that's spent just like once the vendors send me their inventory list, kind of like going through and looking at like quantities that they have and gaps that we might have and calling them and being like, hey, can you bump up this quantity or can you split this crop with this person? And then maybe reaching out to our regional producers a little bit farther away if we don't have something that week. So there is quite a bit of that logistical part of it just to make the box be as good as we want it to be each week. And yeah, so I would definitely say like shooting for more of like a part-time position for the CSA program at least is a good way to start um, budgeting for the hours for that. And as far as quantities, we did 40 boxes last year total, and we're increasing to 80 this year. That's our hope. Um, we are working with a partner, uh, our hospital really like was interested in this program last year and they were like, how could we get this offered to our employees? They're a nonprofit, smaller hospital, so we work with them in their kitchen. They buy some of our local food to have in the cafeteria, so they're kind of like already working with us and familiar with our marketing and schedule. But we're going to be doing hopefully like 50 boxes to their staff, offering for them, and then we're going to offer 30 to our retail customers. But the benefit of offering the 50 to them is that we can drop them all off at one location. So having drop spot locations as you increase shares or just doing like on farm pickup if you don't have a delivery, obviously. But for us, we were like trying to scale up without scaling too big, but basically having the deliveries all going to one location for 50 boxes and then having the 30 be individual homes made it a lot more manageable for us, if that makes sense.
On that topic, just to share, we have 263 today subscriptions, active subscriptions, plus the 7 markets, and we do home delivery as well as drop sites. So it is a very big nest or web of coordination, and I can vouch for that. Half at your level, half makes sense to me. We have 2 full-time people, myself and the other, plus packers and drivers, and then drop site hosts at homes. And so we don't pay them, but they get a little bonus in their subscription level. So yeah, it's a lot of coordination. One difference between how we do it, and we don't just send out a box. So this also takes coordination, but I feel like it's almost easier. So we just have to put inventory into the store and the customers go and choose what they want in their box. We pack that specific request in a box and take that to them. So there isn't as much coordination with other farms to say, let's make sure we have a rounded box every time. It's coordination to say, let's make sure we have everything in the store that people might want.
Thanks. Okay. There was one more question from Alex, who is a member of a producer-owned cooperative in Wisconsin. And so they're just wanting to make sure they're understanding correctly that neither of you are beholden to like a producer board of directors, and also clarification that um, the Full Farm CSA is it its own LLC?
Yes, its own business. And we are not a co-op. We simply have a wholesale, you can think of it as we have a wholesale or resale relationship with those other vendors. They send to us at wholesale costs, we mark it up and sell it to the public.
Got
I
it.
had a question actually for you, Laura. do you guys charge for delivery in addition to the CSA, or is it incorporated into your
We
price?
do. No, we do. We have if you order $125 value in each box, that delivery will be free. We have a discount. It's a half off of the delivery fee, which we just raised to 20, which is a lot. It feels like a lot, but in this delivery market world that we live in now, it doesn't seem off scale. But if you are at our highest level of subscriber, which is 500 a month, then you only pay 10. But it's easy for them to make every box $125. So it's really pretty easy to get around the delivery charge, and that's only for home deliveries. The ones that go to drop sites are always free.
Cool. Yeah, we're exploring charging. Last year we were in a pilot, so we just included it with our program, but I think we're gonna do $3 per delivery for people within 5 miles of our packing site, and then outside of 5 miles, it's $6. We've been talking to a lot of other food hubs that do this, and they say that people won't pay over $10 in these like small rural areas for delivery. So we're trying to make it like worthwhile for people while also supporting us. So we landed on
Totally.
the like $6 range and to see how that goes, just so people know.
Yeah. Maybe I would suggest if you give them that minimum order, might be a nice way to sort of soften the blow. We did have to shrink our free or shrink our area for delivery. So Eugene has all these outlying areas that are, semi-rural with people with big houses. Those are exactly the people we want ordering food from us, because as we all know, food's more expensive if it's raised carefully. So we do want that market, but we can't be spending 20 minutes per delivery. It's just prohibitive. So we had to shrink our area a little bit, which caused 4 customers, I believe, to have to rethink how they do it. And everyone has stuck with it and figured it out.
Yeah, I was actually reading about a CSA in upstate New York, and their delivery is more expensive to the customers around the farm than it is to New York City. And they were having issues with customers not understanding that it just when it's rural, that, every single person, it's like a 15 to 30-minute drive to their house versus New York City, you just drop it and everyone lives in like a mile radius.
Yeah, true.
Um, Chloe had a question for you, Laura. Do you harvest before or after the customers have ordered a specific item?
That's a good question. Well, I think what happens is the garden folks put the availability in our store. And then the orders are placed, and then there's a harvest the night before or the morning. So Monday and Tuesday morning, based on that. If it's a very fresh thing, if it's onions and garlic and storage things, of course, that's already been harvested and stored. But yeah, it is here are the orders, now go pull it out. We can't let things sit in the ground after a certain point, so we do harvest it when that kind of thing comes up.
I had a question for both of you. I don't know if it is applicable to your situations, but if you've ever had producers who perhaps want to be growing the same thing, but you don't have capacity to be carrying both of their same item in your CSA, how that would be managed, or how you just manage, or also to that line, like pricing, how you manage pricing for similar items from different producers.
Well, I guess I'm going to let Delaney talk about that. It seems more applicable to hers. We tell our vendors what we're looking for based on what their availability list that comes to us, and so it's sort of a seasonal expectation of what's available here in the Willamette Valley. We look forward to knowing that these things are going to be in the store at this time. We lettuce, I'll say this, fresh lettuce, baby lettuce mixes, mesclun mixes are extremely popular. And we carry 2 different vendors on that plus whatever we have ours to try and just make sure that's always in the store. And I think the pricing is comparable. I
Do
haven't
you
noticed.
let each vendor set their own pricing?
Yes, but they have to obviously be smart about that and say if they want, they have to look at their competitor. And so I think it naturally works out. I don't believe that we tell them how to do it. I think that's a natural part of business.
Yeah, it's definitely the same for us. We don't really tell them, we let them set their own pricing. But they do, like, we have an online market where all the people that are in our CSA program pretty much are on our online market as well. And so they're able to see what the other producers are charging for their items. And usually I mean, some of them are like, 50 cents more, but there's not a lot of like variation in pricing just because they want people to, buy their stuff too. So I think I agree with Laura. It kind of naturally happens with the way that the market is structured. And then as far as like us for when we're selecting things in the boxes, yeah, it is like if somebody has a product that's like higher value, we have to let them know like we're not going to be able to have that super often just because we have to keep the value of the boxes at a certain amount and we want to have variety in there. So if they're listing a product that's a lot higher in value, I'll just have that conversation with them. Like, we might only be able to use this once or twice throughout the season just because we're trying to keep the boxes at this flat rate. Because we have people pay ahead of time instead of how Laura does like the week by week thing. So we have to kind of stay in that more stricter window of what the price per box.
Totally, yeah. I will say from the co-op models that I've seen, like there's a much more involved because it is like a cooperatively owned structure. There's a much more involved upfront wintertime planning period for this kind of thing. And so if anyone here is interested in that kind of model, like know that it can involve a lot more, obviously, cooperation among the farmers and figuring out like who's going to be allowed to grow which amount of crop for which price because you're all operating under the same CSA versus like working with the way that Full Farm does it, where it's like the customer gets to shop for whatever they want that's available from all these different producers. I see Adam has his hand up, so if you want to come off mute, Adam.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I just wanted to start off by thanking Delaney and Laura for sharing more about their CSA programs. They're both very interesting. I had a question for Laura specifically.
You want the small one?
The
Small for you?
oh, you kind of message it as a subscription to your CSA. I'm curious how customers are charged. Are they charged that price per month, or is that a total cost that they're charged up front and then the credit is just broken out by month and put into their account?
Yeah, no, it's a monthly charge. So they sign on for either $200, $300, or $500 balance loading every month, every 30 days. And then they spend down on that 30-day in between period. The balance rolls over if they don't spend it all. If they do spend it all, they just get charged in the cart for any overage. It's very flexible. Yeah, so that's how that works.
That's awesome. Is the credit just continuously rolls over as long as they just have credit left?
It does. I would say the only negative to that is busy lives and forgetting there is a pause button in our software. The farmer owners don't actually like that feature because the CSA is supposed to be sustaining income for a farm. So if they're always opting out, then that's not really what's happening for us. But as a customer service person and as a person who has had subscriptions in my life, I mean, signing on to something that I don't have any flexibility in is also a negative from my perspective. So it's a balance. So what I was going to say is the only negative of that is they do accrue if they're not paying attention. And right now I'm in this, because I'm trying to negotiate what the owners want and what I feel customers want, I'm trying to educate the clientele that, maybe if you get a balance that accrues, you can shop for things when they're in season and put them in your freezer. With us selling meat, that's a really obvious one. Or we try and help them understand that we have programs for people who can't afford the balance. And so we will subsidize that with donations. And so if they end up with a giant overage, which I now am trying to make sure I catch and tell them as a customer service person, hey, watch out, you're getting in danger zone. But some people will blow your mind. Oh, we have $4,500 in there and we'd like to just donate it. I was like, thank you very much. We will take that. So,
That's
and it doesn't come to us as farm owners. What we do is put an account for our Feed a Friend program.
awesome. One last question, just around pricing and cost structure and stuff. It says that subscribers get member pricing on all products. Is there a different price that non-members see, and how does that work in the structure?
Yeah, the software has lists of products that you either are a member of or not. So if you are a non-member, you go into the guest list and everything is a higher price by 5 or 10%, depending on the area of the product. Because there's different overhead and different, I'm not sure exactly, I'm not on that side of it, but the pricing is about 5 to 10% more expensive when you just shop in our store as a guest. If you are a member, you're in either the regular membership or the herd share membership, which is the one around raw dairy, where they have to also be charged to own part of our herd, which is the workaround in Oregon for that, for the law that says no raw dairy. So those two lists have different ingredients that the members will see, dairy or not. And then both of them have the reduced by 10 or 5% pricing.
Gotcha. What percentage of your customers are members versus non-members?
That is a good question. I wonder if my, let me see here. Number of guest orders for the last 6 weeks, 3, 5, 4, 8, 4, 2, 2, 2. So that gives you an idea. And then on the membership side, it's in the range of 125 to 170 per week.
Gotcha. So a small percentage, but
Yeah,
still
it's
people
not,
coming through.
I feel like people use it to check it out.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
thank you. I see. Oh, Adam, was that it for you?
I have a million different questions, but I can ask them a little later.
Okay, I wanted to get to the ones in the chat. You feel free to raise your hand again. Emily was asking, do you have any resource suggestions for how you make sure all the vendors have all their business certifications in order, thinking about the cottage industry rules with value-added products?
I can talk about that. I don't know if Delaney might have something. We just added a new baker. So I was witness to that a little bit. The cottage industry rules for baking are that you can use a home kitchen for baking now. So we are going with this new person. She makes lovely bread, but doesn't have a commercial kitchen yet, and we don't have room in our commercial kitchen for her, but we decided to give it a try anyway, and we'll see where it grows. For other ones, we just try to ask all the questions that a business relationship requires. We inspect visually what they have going on and make sure it looks professional. And often they are existing respected members of our business community anyway. So this bakery one was interesting because that was a small startup.
I was just dropping in the chat, because we're an online market, we have a vendor agreement that all of our vendors have to sign. In that agreement is when we do all the certification checks. So before they hand us that signed copy, we see in person or get verification of the certifications they say they have in the meeting. And then once we have the vendor agreement from them, we kind of just trust that those are being renewed. But we do like a re-up every year for the vendor agreement. So that kind of creates little issue with the vendors that are in the CSA program because they're already, they already have that meeting with us and we already verify all that stuff ahead of time. But I put we try to have like as many resources as we can on our Sell With Us page online that takes them to like the different pages for all the licensing that they need. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for dropping that too. That is an awesome resource. Chloe asked, when customers pick each week, do you have a problem with people being too late for the week stuff, like does that drive them back to stores if something is no longer in stock? Do you feel like there's a problem with people not being able to order what they want? I think that's what she means.
Is that for mine?
I would assume so, yeah.
I mean, I think so. Things sell out and we market as that. And as idealistic and available as it is to me and idealistic that I am about what I buy, there isn't a reality that I can avoid going to the store ever. Um, and I just think life is like that and we have to be pragmatic and try our best.
Um,
I
another,
will say
oh,
one
sorry.
thing on that. Because we have an online market, I can also speak to that because we have a lot less than Laura offers. And we have heard with like limited quantities of things. We have our market open from Thursday at 5 p.m. to Sunday at midnight, and that's when customers can shop. And usually by like Friday, Saturday morning, maybe most of the fresh produce is sold out. So that's something that's difficult, which is the benefit to having like all these other value added items that can, supplement. Like we do dairy as well, from Gary and Sons, and then we have like bread, eggs, meat, all those things, fish from the Oregon coast. So we've been trying to increase variety just to have things available for the people that are shopping late. But we do hear often like, oh, I got on Sunday to shop and everything was sold out. So yeah, we're running into that for sure. And it has definitely turned people away. But we do know the more value added items we get, the more keeps people around. And we just try and encourage people to shop early. But yeah, that is a thing for us in a smaller area with less producers.
I mean, that's kind of awesome that the first thing to sell out is the fresh produce, though. Okay, I see two more questions in chat. I'm gonna try and I'm just gonna ask them both at once since we only have a few more minutes. And if either you, Delaney and Laura, feel comfortable sharing your contact information, if anyone has a follow-up question, that would be great. So the last two questions, from a marketing standpoint, how did you gain traction on your online store? And then back to like insurance and certification. Do insurance companies check the chain of vendor certifications or at least admit they've seen the chain of interaction that you have?
Here, I'll just quickly say about the marketing, because that is something I do. We have worked hard this year to use our Wix-based website with very good SEO and with our blog slash newsletter. We hired a guy who helps us, who did the SEO activist, whatever they call it, to make it effective, and it's been very impressive. We get a lot more traction in the last 3 months than we ever have on the internet. We come up higher in searches. So that's been great. And at the same time, I don't know how to credit only that, but because ever since I've been with the company for 1 year, we've been just tightening up and making the systems work better. So we can now onboard without a sweat. We can now cancel without a sweat. All of that is a piece of cake, and that makes a big difference. It makes the customer happier. It makes us spend less money, and it makes the whole thing run smoother. So I feel like all these things together really help. Another argument for having somebody who's not in the dirt all day, having a brain available to give this energy, and that can definitely include outside contractors. This guy has been just a godsend for us. We can just, on your website, Madeline, I found that article you'd written about us recently, and the link was wrong, or was broken. Not your fault. The link was broken. So I immediately wrote to Mike, our guy in Florida, and he fixed it in 10 minutes. And that kind of help is so valuable. And he's off in Florida in a completely different world, feeling like he's got his fingers in something real that he believes in too. And that's just makes for a great team.
Yeah, we also have a marketing person who's our market manager. So she runs our online marketplace half time and then she does our marketing half time. So there is a dedicated person who's able to spend time like really pushing things out for us. I will say like we definitely just use a lot of social media and newsletter stuff. And then we also really gotten into SMS marketing, like texting. It seems to work really well for us because a lot of people don't check their email anymore and it's overloaded with stuff. And so for us, for our online market, we send text reminders before the market closes and when the market opens to remind people to shop. And I think we're going to be using it for our CSA program this year. Once we launch the boxes, we'll send that out. The only like caveat with that with SMS marketing is you have to have people opt in. You can't just send them a text to their number without their permission for you to text them. So we do a lot of things where we give them like a coupon, $5 off their first order if they sign up for our text alert. But that's something that we've been using, and it's really working to keep people around and to help with our like customer base this year. And then I'm not really sure the insurance part. That would be more of our market manager question because she's the one handling the vendor agreement. So that's a good question. But whoever asked that, I can get back to you on email if you're wondering once I talk to her.
All right, well, that brings us to time. Um, I really, really thank you, Laura and Delaney, so much for being here, taking an hour out of your day to share with us, and for all of you who attended for being so engaged. I really appreciate that. This has been really wonderful and fruitful, and I'm so glad I remembered to record it this time. Yeah, I think that, yeah, they both dropped their email in the chat. So if anyone had lingering follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. And again, if you have more questions about resources or starting something of your own, I am so happy and thrilled to be of assistance to you. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.